the stock market might drop 30 or 40%, which is quite an optimistic scenario. We find ourselves in a situation where we have three bubbles in the stock, bond, and real estate markets at the same time. It's not the problem of these people, it's a problem of the whole economy. Welcome to the Coin Post. It's no secret that if the US economy collapses, you and I will not be foxtrotting our way, but will find ourselves in a prolonged financial crisis, which will take decades to get out of. That is why we're looking so closely at the situation in America. And today I'm bringing to your attention the recent opinions of the three experts on this subject, namely financial analyst Gary Shilling, Nobel Laureate Robert Schiller, and politician and economist William Spriggs. Three experts, three opinions, and about 10 minutes of your precious time that we're gonna spend together to your maximum advantage. Let's try to get to the heart of the matter. Subscribe to the channel, please. And let's begin. Our first guest is Gary Shilling, and he's quite pessimistic. Keep in mind that he's talking about the economy and not the stock price. So, in the expert's opinion, the future model of the American economy is L-shaped, that is, has a massive fall and long-term bottom, which is by no means quick V-shaped recovery. We'll be at the bottom until 2021, and only there we'll see the first signs of growth. There are various reasons for the economic downturn. The main ones are changes in consumer sentiment. People will work more remotely, which means less transportation, no lunch at the cafes, or no shopping. As a result of recent events, people have simply become less sociable, spending less time at leisure centers, watching fewer movies, and so on. This is the new consumption culture, which will lead to deflation. To make up for it, we'll need new business money, but the Fed's current rates are already close to zero. Unlike the 2008 mortgage crisis, which affected only specific categories of people, the current coronavirus thing affects absolutely everyone in the world. That is why the consequences are so massive. Yet, despite the large-scale money printing, the US is not threatened by hyperinflation. This would be possible in a closed economy, and as long as the US is part of the global economy, it spends extra money on imports, so they don't need to worry about inflation. The expert doesn't believe that Trump's team will go to such extremes as closing all imports. The fact is that the global supply chains, like when they designed the iPhone in the US, make the chips in Taiwan, and produce the smartphones in China, exist because they are efficient and so profitable. China's production may be relocated to Mexico, but America won't give up on cheap labor. At this point, Gary Shilling is expecting increased financial support for small businesses, which are in the worst situation. Helicopter money will be cut, because giving out dollars is driving people out of work, and the number of people on benefits is going up. The expert is not afraid of the growing US debt, because the world is full of liquidity to compensate for it, and doesn't support the idea of canceling public debts, such as student loans, because everyone has to take responsibility for their actions. But with the deflation, it will be harder for people to repay, because their incomes will fall, which is why the Fed is so afraid of falling prices. Concerning the stock market situation, the expert draws parallels with the Great Depression of 1929. At that time, the stock prices quickly recovered from the terrible fall, and many people thought the worst was behind. But then the recession caught up with the market and it collapsed by 89%. Something like this Gary Shilling is waiting for this time. In 6 months or a year, the stock market might drop 30 or 40%, which is quite an optimistic scenario. The trigger for this projection will be the third quarter of 2020, which will show if there's a chance of rapid recovery or the start of the recession. We've outlined the first expert's interview. 2 more guests are coming. I'm sure they will surprise you. And if you want to get more videos like this, give us the thumbs up. Our second guest is the Nobel Laureate in Economics, Robert Schiller. A while ago we had him in our video talking about the stock market and why the share price is rising. And today we want to concentrate on the US economy, and at this point the expert is finding it difficult to make any firm projection. The point is that the current crisis is bizarre. We're in a situation we've never had before, and people are forced to change their way of life, mindset, and approach to business, especially the latter. We find ourselves in a situation where we have 3 bubbles in the stock, bond, and real estate markets at the same time. Many blame it on the Fed and printed dollars, but it works worldwide without exception. However, in the next few months, any or all of the three markets could collapse. If we take the real estate market, cities are the most at risk. People choose them because they're close to work and entertainment. But if you're offered remote work and don't risk going to the theater for fear of catching the virus, then why pay a lot of money for a small city apartment? As a result, the city's demand for accommodation may substantially plummet, as may the prices for housing in the city. Commercial real estate is also in danger. People don't want to go to the office right now, and employers don't want to rent big offices. We have a similar situation in the education system, when classes are overcrowded with students and they gotta build new universities. This could raise US GDP substantially through investment in construction. But there's a different way though. A massive shift to remote work and online education, and there's now a lot of evidence that humanity will go into this direction. The expert points out that this doesn't mean that everyone will go online. People still love to be a part of the community and cannot give up live communication. But the growth of remote work and education will soon be significant. Robert added that the idea of education itself is going to go to the background, and what matters is your skills only. The emphasis is shifting to practical learning, and therefore, he advises his students to become experts in the areas that will allow them to conquer the internet. Our guest is also raising the issue of the growing social inequality between the rich and the poor, which has increased due to the pandemic. Society is polarized, on the one hand by the rich, on the other by the poor, and the problem is that, in the long run, this will prevent economic success because of the anger and prejudice of the poor. The experts calls for measures to avoid conflicts in society. Still, there were some good things about the corona crisis. We started to respect the ordinary professions, especially doctors, but also salespeople and couriers. This trend of respect and cohesion can bring people together and relieve tensions due to social inequality. Robert Schiller believes that governments in the US and elsewhere that support the economy while helping people, especially the most vulnerable, are doing the right thing. He remembered, as did our first guest, the Great Depression, after which we had such social institutions as unemployment benefits and deposit insurance. Caring for people has made society stronger and has become the engine of the economy. Perhaps as a result of the COVID-19, we'll also see new institutions that will help unite humanity. And now let's move on to the final expert. And yes, if you haven't pressed the subscribe button, then it's time to do so. We got a lot of fascinating content. William Spriggs is a professor of economics at Harvard University, and he continued talking about social inequality after a previous guest. He pointed out that if a country has a large number of workers who have no savings in the event of a crisis, it's not the problem of these people, it's a problem of the whole economy. Especially in a double crisis situation, with the coronavirus pandemic on the one hand and the real sector recession on the other. However, the second problem could not be solved until the virus thing is over. According to William Spriggs, the US Federal Reserve acted the right way to announce unlimited quantitative easing and give the markets new money, because the local power doesn't have enough leverage to end the crisis. So we had to act at the federal level. He says until we have some financial support, the Fed must act. And those who blame them for printing the dollars and say that the market should make everything right are wrong. The issue of printing dollars arises only when these funds are not channeled to the real economy. If this money is used for loans to companies and businesses and the purchasing power growth, then it's fully justified. What William Spriggs is really unhappy about is actually throwing people out of work during the quarantine. He's convinced that it was necessary to give companies and businesses money to keep the jobs. Now the unemployment rate is soaring. It's extremely difficult just to tell everyone to go back to work, and the problem may take a long time. The adoption of a minimum wage law of $50 per hour might be a good response. This will make it attractive for people to return to work and in the long term create a working class with sufficient income to save and be resilient to the crisis. And you know, having listened to all of this, I've had some disturbing thoughts. The appeals to give people money and fight the social inequality seem right. But don't you think, my dear viewers, that this is the beginning of the end of capitalism and the return to the origins of socialism? Let's discuss it in the comments. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching. It's the Coin Post channel. Subscribe and get enlightened.